Welcome to the Pacific Northwest and local stories with Bigfoot Fades Northwest Yeti Quest. Glitch in the tree line, a silhouette dark, searching for prints and a mystical spark. Climbing the ridgeline where the air gets thin, the hunt for the legend is about to begin. Chasing the legend through a neon haze, deep in the pines for nights and days. The signal is peaking, the truth won't fade, with Northwest Yeti Quest and Bigfoot Fade. Pacific North Stories. Never sleep, Pacific North Stories. The secrets we keep.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the show, Bigfoot Fades. And then today we have Hugh Knight over here with Northwest Yeti Quest. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. That intro was awesome. You did really well on that.
Thank you. And that was all your own footage, huh?
Yeah, it was really cool.
You've been getting a lot of great footage out there. It's pretty amazing channel you have going. How long has your channel been out for?
I'm coming up on what I consider my 1-year anniversary here. I forget the exact date. My channel's been up technically for, I think, like 14 months, but I kind of consider my 1-year date will be when I put the first video out of me going out alone on a camping trip, because that's kind of when I really started. The very first video I put up was my first sighting that started me down all this, and that got posted, and then it was several months later before I had anything else to put on the channel. And so it's my 1-year anniversary is basically coming up for me real soon. I got to check that exact date.
Yeah, you're doing really great with your channel.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's grown pretty good. Obviously you always want more as a person trying to get views and stuff like that. But from talking to other YouTubers, they're saying like, wow, yeah, you're doing really good. Actually, I think I have 3,700 or something subscribers. And yeah, it's been
awesome.
Cool. People have been cool. The response has been positive. I was kind of nervous in the beginning of getting attacked and, accused of hoaxing. And I haven't really had a lot of that. A little, but not much.
Yeah, I definitely feel like those are all normal fears with starting a YouTube channel.
Yeah, especially in encrypted stuff. You're just asking for it. But it's, people seem to be really waking up to this phenomenon more and more. It just seems like obviously there's still a lot more people that are unaware or totally in denial of it. But surprisingly, it seems like everywhere I go, there's believers and experiencers and knowers, and it's been pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I found your channel. I feel like it just popped up on YouTube one day, and it was like the one with the Bigfoot that was standing still. And I tried to clean up that picture, and I was like, no way, I see a face. So I emailed you and I sent that to you, and that was the first time we talked.
Yeah, and that was like the first video I ever put out that actually, I don't want to say blew up, but at that time period, I was lucky to get more than a few hundred views. And that video was the first video that Elia helped me make. And yeah, that was when I thought like, wow, this might actually work, because that video blew up and you got a few thousand views in the first couple of days, which was just crazy for me at the time. And that's right. Yeah, that was you. I remember that face you sent me, and Yeah, you and I have been communicating for quite a while now that I think about it.
Yeah, and I've been wanting to do a show with you, but like I was saying, I was just kind of trying to learn the ropes, and I've been learning from BMR and Paul and Blondes and Booze and Tex and all these awesome people. So now I'm kind of like, okay, now I've got StreamYard down, and they've been really kind to kind of show me how to get everything going. And so yeah, I'm definitely ready now.
Cool. Yeah, you seem like you know what you're doing. I mean, way
Thanks.
better than me. I can't make videos and stuff like that. You're
Well,
doing
yeah,
great.
it's pretty fun, and I'm enjoying helping other people with it too.
Yeah, I look forward to doing a video with you in the future. I really do.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, and to get started today, I kind of want to hear about your background. You were saying that you have a history of tree trimming, tree maintenance, and also going out and looking for rocks and using machines to take rocks apart. Let's hear some about your back history before you started getting into Bigfoot.
Yeah. Well, so I I grew up on property with, firewood and trees and chainsaws, and so I've been familiarized with running a chainsaw my whole life. And I've had different jobs over the years working in the forests. I was a wildland firefighter for a few fire seasons and carrying a chainsaw. And I was what you call a sawyer on the wildland fire crew, and I was the guy that would go in and cut down trees that were burnt, hazardous trees. And I also would be on crews working for Department of Natural Resources where we would go out in the mountains and just cut down every single thing that wasn't a timber tree. It's called slash cutting, and so I have a lot of experience running saws, and I worked on a couple different tree services here and there over the years, cutting trees and doing that kind of stuff. And then eventually I just started working for myself because I've been a carpenter my whole life, and I still do a lot of carpentry projects, but I do a mix of carpentry and tree removal. But then I started buying machines and doing a lot of like land clearing, brush clearing. So I do kind of a wide variety of stuff, but a lot of what I do is tree removal, tree trimming, stuff like that.
Do you feel like all of that experience has helped you really identify, because you have a lot of content on your channel about like hollowed out trees with, it looks like this shredding of, I hope I'm not saying it wrong, like bark or sawdust type stuff coming out, like something dug out these
Yeah,
hollows, or like
yeah,
burrows with the bugs you're talking about.
yeah. And I do think it's helped me kind of identify trees and what they should and shouldn't be like. And it also helps in debates where people are trying to convince me that a lot of these anomalies are the work of Mother Nature. And I know they're not, because I mean, in my home right now, I mean, I can see evergreen trees, conifer trees in every direction. I know what they're supposed to look like. And in my research area, they're just so bizarre. So many of them are just completely abnormal. The arches, the topping of them, on and on and on. And so, yeah, I would say the work that I've done running a saw and cutting trees definitely helped me recognize how bizarre things were pretty quickly, pretty easily, for sure.
And that was another one of my questions too. Do you feel, because I notice in a lot of videos you say a lot of things like this is not natural, this is not natural. People might say this is not natural. Have you been getting a lot of backflack from people in person or online saying like, oh, that's just nature? Or is that just something that you automatically are like, thinking in your head?
Um, a mixture of all, because I do get a little bit of people writing comments trying to tell me, that this and certain things aren't that rare, or certain things could be from the weather. And then in person I get a little bit of that from people, but most people to my face just kind of play along and pretend that they believe. I think behind my back people are always a little bit different, but in the videos I'm usually just kind of trying to preconceive what the naysayer is going to say, just to kind of, I don't know, prepare for the argument of it all. So
Okay.
it's like a mixture of all. I'm
Okay.
always trying to, okay, I'm looking at something that is not right. This should not be here. how could this be explained naturally? And so then I come up with the solutions that a non-believer would throw at me. And so I try to prepare that counter argument already. You know, it's just part of the game, I guess, of trying to prove that these things exist.
Well, and for a lot of people who aren't familiar with your channel, I feel like your story, the one where you're with your family going camping and you hike up and you see the one. Can you tell us all about that story? Because I feel
Yeah.
like that's a huge highlight of your life.
Yeah. You're referring to the very first sighting where it all started?
Yeah, where it all started.
Yeah. So that was me out in the woods. I was actually looking for agates, giant agates, in this particular mountain range that's near the Oregon-Washington border, near the coast, very rural logging wilderness type area. And I'd been going up there for years, pulling giant agates and crystals and stuff out of that mountain, just as a hobby, something I do for fun. And that's what I was doing. And I had been going through this stage where I was watching a lot of stuff on Bigfoot at home. YouTube algorithm just keeps feeding you stuff once you start watching something. And that was because I found a mutilated deer in my neighborhood that was very strange. And I couldn't make sense of this deer that had been harvested and its organs had been ripped out. And it was just a very weird thing to find in my housing development, especially because there's no accounts of anybody ever seeing big predators where I live, ever. There's a highway nearby, there's a town right there, there's stores and homes in every direction. You don't get bears and cougars out here. But I found this mutilated deer that just weirded me out. And so I was researching Bigfoot and other cryptids just out of pure curiosity. And so I'm up in the mountains and I'm thinking about the Sasquatch stuff I've been watching and really wondering if they're real or not. And that's one of the weirdest things of this whole thing is I put down I had a big drill in my hand that's for breaking rocks. It's a roto hammer drill. And I was been drilling and drilling this rock for hours. And I was just tired of it. This rock wasn't working. So I wanted to climb up and see if I could see a Bigfoot. And that is just like, as I've said many times, I feel like I shouldn't even admit that part of it because it just makes it sound so much harder to believe. But that is literally what I did. I put the tools down and I said, I'm going to climb up there and I'm going to look into that valley and see if I can see a Bigfoot. And with no thought of it really happening at all, it was just sort of a reason to take a break. And so I climb up to this viewpoint, I look down, and it was just pretty quick looking into this valley, and I'm staring at something, and I'm just in my head, I'm like, that looks like a Bigfoot right there, but it's not a Bigfoot. What is it? Like it's a shadow. Is it a stump? And staring at it, and it's just starts walking, arms swinging, long legs, and I'm just, blown away, just completely in awe of what I'm staring at, and just thinking in my head, like, am I dreaming right now? Is this real? Like, how do I say I'm going to go up and see if I can spot a Sasquatch? And then I'm staring at a Sasquatch, and so I, mouth open, just staring at this thing for a while, watching it walk through the trees. And I didn't have my phone on me, so I didn't know what to do, if I should abandon this view and go get my phone or what. But long story short, I said, screw it, I need my phone. And so I climbed down this cliff, run to the truck, get the phone, fly back up there. And it took me a minute to find it. I thought it was gone. And I had all this regret for going and getting the phone, but then I spotted it and got the phone out. I'm filming it. But what's crazy, and this, falls into many accounts of people say this exact same thing, is as I got it in my phone and as I got it in the screen and I'm filming this thing, it didn't walk anymore. It stayed in that one spot the whole time. And I sat there filming it I mean, I sat up there for about an hour, maybe more than an hour, because initially I had like 40 minutes of footage of this thing, but a lot of the footage was just so garbage because the clouds were so thick, and I would film and then the clouds would raise and the clouds would block me out, so I'd stop recording. Then the clouds would lift up and I was under the clouds so I could get footage of it. And I played that game for a while until the clouds got so thick I couldn't see it anymore. And phone was ringing too for people wanting me to get home and get off the mountain. And a truck ended up coming up the road, and I was just like, okay, it's time to go. And so got out of there, and then I became, the very thing that I had been mocking and rolling my eyes at for decades about the Bigfoot thing. Somebody claimed to have seen one and has this footage that's vague and unclear. And it was just crazy that I became one of those people, because I was not a full-blown believer at all at that point. I guess I was becoming a little more open-minded to it, but I was definitely more on the verge of a non-believer than a believer up until that moment.
I've seen the footage of it. It looks like it's pretty far down there. Have you made it down into that valley yet, or?
It's crazy because I have made it into that valley, but on the other side of the river. You can't see the river in that footage. But that particular valley where the Sasquatch was at, I've never stood right there, and I've tried to get there. It's weird because if you look at the footage, it seems like, oh, you could just climb down there and get down there, but you can't, because it's all cliffs on that ledge where I'm standing, really steep, crumbly, dangerous cliffs. And I could probably get down those cliffs without hurting myself, but then I have to get out of there. But climbing up them would just be a nightmare. And so I've attempted many different routes. I've tried every old abandoned gravel road up there, and I've tried time and time again to get in and out of that valley, and it's always been a failure. I've been really close before. Like, for example, I was very close one time, but that's when I discovered this monument of upside down trees for the first time. And so that stole all my motivation and took me off on a tangent. Then I focused on those. And so it's been, and there's been many other weird examples of things that just did not work out. So every attempt to get in that valley has been a failure. But I've been all over that area, just never stood right there where the Sasquatch was standing. Not yet, at least.
And this was technically the state of Washington or Oregon?
The main research area where all this happened is in Oregon.
Okay. Without giving out any locations, I was just trying to figure out what state. So I'm in Oregon too. So that's my state. I love it. And you're up in Washington?
Yeah, I live in Washington. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, cool. And this happened a year ago?
This sighting okay, so it was the day before Father's Day. So this last Father's Day was 1 year to the day before. So this was like 20 months ago now.
Okay, and then so let's say it's about 20 months ago. And then when was the other one after that? The one that you've seen it standing still?
The one at the beach, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that sighting happened because we were just talking about trying to get into that valley. On one of my attempts to get into that valley, I was on a mountain bike, electric mountain bike, and I got ran over by a logger and got injured really bad. And I had to leave the mountain in an ambulance. And so I was very injured, could barely walk.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah. And that injury was the condition I was in from that injury. That was when I was at the beach with my family, and that was in Ocean Shores, Washington. And that's totally outside of my research area. That was just a random kind of trip we took. And I was out walking with them, and we were on the backside of the peninsula at Ocean Shores. and I was on crutches walking in the sand. So it was a huge pain in the ass. I was really slow. I had one crutch, and I went off a different direction than they did because they wanted to go walk on the shoreline, and I was up kind of looking at this marshy, swampy area. And I had my spotting scope that attaches to my cell phone. And it gives you really good long distance footage, but it doesn't have any anti-shake. It's really hard to have it stable and clear. But I was able to zoom way across this swamp of approximately a mile. And I was just scanning around because I knew that Ocean Shores has had a lot of Bigfoot sightings in that area. And so I was just playing around, and I scan in on this thing, and I'm staring at my phone, and I'm just like, what is that? And I'm
Yeah.
my daughter came walking up while I was doing this, and she's like, what are you doing, Dad? And I'm just like, look at the screen, look at my phone. What does that look like to you? And she's like, that looks exactly like a Sasquatch. And I'm like, I know, but I was kind of just not sure what it was. And I'm just kind of thinking, there's no way this is another Sasquatch. And I got a lot of footage of that. I got, that's probably about a 20-minute video on my channel. That's Bigfoot Beach Walk is the name of the video. And as I'm filming this thing, it was around that time period that everybody was coming back from the beach, and they wanted me to go because I was so slow. They didn't want to wait on me. And so they're all go, you need to go, start heading back to the car. And so I started walking. I took maybe, 5-7 paces, and there was a log that was perfect for setting the spotting scope on and stabilizing it because it's real bouncy footage. And so I stabilized it, and I zoom in right where the Bigfoot was at, or the object that looked like a Bigfoot, I guess is what I should call it, because I still don't know for sure what it was. I just know what it looks like it was. And as I zoomed in and looked, it was gone. It wasn't there anymore. And so I panned around trying to find it. But then we left, and it wasn't until I got home that I looked at the footage and realized that the creature was still there. It's just the angle had changed. Either it had taken a few steps and was trying to blend in with this stump that was next to it, or it moved that much for me taking a few paces. I don't know, but I couldn't see it anymore. But once I looked at the footage, I realized, it is still there. It's right there, but it was blending in with the stump behind it. And so it's real frustrating because I probably could have got good footage of it on that stabilized version with the stump, but I thought it was gone. So I didn't spend much time zooming in on it at that point. And that was just a weird fluke. I just couldn't even believe that happened. It wasn't even like, I wasn't even sure if I was going to put that video on my channel or anything because it wasn't a part of my research area, and it was just such a weird happenings. But I'm glad I did, and now that's an area that I have a lot of interest in. I'd love to get out to Ocean Shores and do more research out there, but I just don't have time.
This was the one that I had cleaned up for you. Is it okay if I share that on here for everyone?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, this one was pretty cool. I actually saw a face on it. If you look.
Yeah.
So if you look here, you can actually see, I think eyes and nose.
Yeah. Eyes and a nose and a mouth.
This almost looked like ears to me, but I think maybe back here would be the ears on it. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. You can actually see kind of the whites on the eyes, but I think I just took a picture of my screen and then was able to really zoom in on that. And then I actually used AI to make this thing walk and get it to get some movement to it. And that was pretty crazy too. So I'll show that in a second.
Yeah.
But there's nothing altered about this at all. This is actually your footage. All I did was mess with the contrast of the lights and the darks and the shadows, and that's it.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. And you can see the big shoulder on it, and it looks like almost like a mane going around its face.
Yeah, and it looks like it's looking at you too. Like it
Yeah,
sees
it
you.
does.
It's like tilted. It's doing this.
Uh-huh.
So, and the crazy thing is that it's like these things can just stand extremely still for a long time. And I almost wonder, do you think it could have been out there waiting for like a deer to pass by or?
It could be, and it's, I'm glad you brought that up because I think that the deer are a reason why people see them on that peninsula so much because the
Okay.
peninsula is covered in houses, just packed with homes. But the deer are all so tame all over that island or all over the peninsula because the locals feed the deer and the deer are so used to people that you can actually get a lot of the deer to eat right out of your hands, and deer are everywhere on that peninsula. And so deer and clams are something that a Sasquatch could go to that peninsula and get almost any night, any day they want. And so I suspect that the deer are why people see them out there.
Now here's the other one. If you compare it to the other one, this one's further back because the other one was standing right here.
Yeah.
Unless you just happen to be at another angle, but that doesn't even matter because if you look at the face is actually changed. It looks like it's looking forward.
Yeah, it does.
And that's
I
why I was
mean,
saying I
because
think
you
it's here.
don't see the eyes and the nose on this one.
No, and then this is from a different spot in your video, and if you like, this almost looks like the ear here
Oh yeah.
tilted back, so
Wow.
that's why I was thinking that could be, but you can see, like, the definition here, and then
Yeah,
just,
the angle is different. Wow,
like
you really got that's really good. I haven't been able to get it. Yeah, I'm not good with computers. I can't do this kind of stuff, but you did really
yeah.
good with it.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got some more for you too. That's not even it. So I have a question too about your one video where you could actually see you're kind of filming and then you're looking at this tree that's arched and then you could see something move behind it. And I don't remember which channel that was on, but I saw one of the highlighted comments was like, "Hey, did you notice that there's something moving in the video?" And I almost messaged you because I was like, "Did you miss that? That was crazy."
I did. Yeah, the first time I ever saw that footage was on my own channel when one of my viewers messaged me and said, "Hey, I think you missed a Sasquatch in the backgrounds." And I get messages
Okay.
like that every now and then, and most of the time I go and look. I don't see what they're seeing, and so I didn't think much of it. But I eventually checked and pulled up that video, and I mean, my eyes, I was just like, how did we not see that? And even in the editing process, we didn't see it because I edit right here on a laptop, and it's usually me and another guy sitting side by side, and somehow we missed it, and I missed it, and when I was filming, it's so crazy that we could have missed all that, but that was the first time I saw it was on my own channel, and it's insane, and I haven't made a big video about it. I'm gonna make a video about it at some point, but I've been kind of nervous. I don't know. I don't know for sure what it is, and it was accidental footage, and I've been kind of hesitant to make a big deal about it because I'm always nervous that I'm going to get accused of hoaxing or something. But I do need to make a video about that and share it because it is weird. It is crazy, and it clearly was right there in dips behind the tree as my camera came to zoom in on it. It was very crazy.
Okay, I'm gonna share this one. So not to like jump around, but
No, go ahead.
this is the first story. So this is like super zoomed in and I cleaned it up and I'm going to show you an even more cleaned up version than this. But if you look, obviously this is all your trees and everything. This has a different color hue to it.
Oh yeah.
And in case anyone ever wants to do this, I use Lightroom on my phone, and all I do is I use contrast, light, dark, and then you can dehaze it and clarify it. And I was able to get that, but clearly there's some different light going on here in the chest. It almost looks like the two arms, and then the body and the width. This actually looks really similar to the Darth Vader Bigfoot picture that I have because I did a side by side of those, and then let me show you the zoomed in of that one. So this is your very first sighting where you were like
Yeah.
crawling up on that cliff that you were talking about. So, and then if you look at this one and like actually look at the detail of it, I did clean it up as much as I possibly could. And I
Yeah.
don't know, it almost again looks like you have some eyes and nose and mouth kind of activity happening there.
Yeah. There's a shape to it. And it looked like you had maybe an arm or something that was moving on it. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah. So that was your first two that you got, I think, right?
Yeah. Well, there was another accidental footage thing of a red, like it looks like it's probably the head of a bright red colored Sasquatch, but you can only see the head and it's sticking up over a stump. And I was playing with a spotting scope that I was just panning around. And that was footage that I saw actually months later as well. But I will say at that time period, I had an experience where I was deep in a canyon and I kept seeing this bright reddish color flashing through the trees, and I would just see glimpses of it. And I was down in the bottom of the canyon and it was up in the top of the canyon. And it was like something was watching me or following me. But I didn't think Sasquatch because it was so bright, fire red orange color. And then, it's a few months later after that day happened that I'm going through old footage and I see where I pan past this stump and there's this weird fire orange red, just looks like the head of a Sasquatch, like it was hiding behind the stump and just its head was showing. But it's, that it's not definitive by any means. And so there's a couple little things like that.
I saw that one last night watching one of your videos, and I feel like I could see a couple eyes and a nose on that. So that's my next one I'm going to try and clean up for you. That was crazy. It was like a bright red, and that's what people usually describe them as like bright red hair.
Yeah, and I was never looking for that color because the one I saw the first day, the first experience was so dark, almost a black, but probably more like a dark brown, but a very dark color. And so, yeah, fire orange red was never anything on my radar. It is now, though. I'm always looking for that color now.
Can I share the picture that you sent me of the hair on the car seat?
Yeah, you can share anything.
Tell us about this one.
Yeah, so this was actually found 1 year to the day of my first sighting, which is just another weird coincidence. I was up there with my wife and kids, and it was for Father's Day weekend, and they wanted to go with me on the research trip. And that was found on a gravel road. I was just driving down the gravel road, and I saw this weird blob in the middle of the road.
I'm gonna shut my window really quick because I live out in the country and they're shooting guns out here. So give me one.
Yeah,
Keep going.
go ahead.
1 second.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, guys. I live out in the country and it gets a little loud with the gunfire out here.
So that ball of hair, I was driving in my truck and I just happened to see it in the middle of the road. And it's actually in an area of the road. I had driven through there a couple of times already. So it's possible I had driven right over the top of that thing a few times before I spotted it. But I saw it, I stopped and I asked my wife, what is that? She didn't know. And I get out and I go over and that was just laying right in the middle of the road, a big old ball of hair, like the size of a wig. And it has a really weird mixture of colors in it. It has a brown, like a lightish kind of brown. It has some really dark brown. It has some almost black looking hairs too. And then a lot of this gray, really white gray, really dark gray. But what's interesting is if you look how there's some locks in there, those locks will have all those colors in each and every lock. So I know that hair, it all originated from one creature because even though it's all these different colors, you can see the variety in some of the locks. And I assume there had to have been a fight for that much hair to get ripped out, and a lot of them have roots attached to them as well. And I've analyzed it. I've had other people analyze it. Nobody's ever found like a scissor cut or anything on any of those hairs. It's some weird hair too. It's the diameter of each hair is 3 to 4 times the normal diameter of any human hair that I've put beside it. And some of the strands, a lot of the strands actually, are so crystal clear, like transparent. It almost looks like fishing string.
Yeah,
And
like
I
right
even
here.
had a guy look at it with a microscope, and he tried telling me it was synthetic. He changed his mind on that, but his initial thought was that it was synthetic. And then his colleague came over and was like, no, that's not synthetic. Look at the scales on it. And then I showed him one with a root, and it was the really clear, really transparent hair that he thought was synthetic. But once he saw that it had scales, and once he saw one with a root, and then his colleague telling him, no, it's not. So he totally changed his tune on it being synthetic. But that's just an example of how weird that hair is, you know, that this guy actually thought it was synthetic. And he jumped all over the place. At one point, he told me that he thought that the black strand he was looking at had been dyed. And he works in a Bigfoot museum, this guy. And I'm like, you think it's been dyed? And then I pulled out a different baggie with locks. And I said, look at this lock. It has black, it has gray, it has brown, and all of it's the same length. It all originated from the same place. So how could they dye one individual hair but not all the others? And that's when his colleague stepped in, and his colleague said, no, it's not been dyed. And these guys at the Bigfoot Museum, you know, I could tell as soon as I walked in the door to show them my hair that they'd already, it's like they already made up their mind that they weren't going to give me any kind of good news on it. And I asked them, I said, do you have actual Bigfoot hair in your museum that we can put side by side with it? And they're like, oh, no, we don't have any. And I'm like, well, how much Bigfoot hair have you actually handled? And they're like, oh, I don't know. We've seen a few samples that might have. And so over and over and over again, I kept running into these people claiming to be experts on hair, microscopic assessment experts. And over again, you get to talking to them, and they've actually never handled anything that was definitively Bigfoot hair. So nobody knows really what to look for. And so I've got this just variety of mixed opinions on that hair. But right now
Really
I have
crazy.
samples with Milbaketchum and samples with the North Carolina State University study. And so those are two pretty good places to have the hair to get a definitive DNA type answer on. But so far it's been crickets from both of them. So I'm just patiently waiting for some kind of news on that hair, because if I can get confirmation that it is from an unknown species, as far as I know, that's the biggest ball of cryptid hair ever found. Because I've watched a lot of videos on people finding hair, and I have not found anybody with a bigger volume of hair than that. So I'm pretty anxious to get some kind of word on that hair, because that hair could really mean something pretty big. That's, everybody says, oh, where's a body, or where's, this, or where's that? And then that's the closest thing to a body I could hope for. So I'm pretty anxious to get word on that damn hair. Been waiting patiently.
I've been cutting hair since 2009, and every hair type you could think of on humans, every hair type. I've never seen hair like that on a person ever.
Yeah, I want to show it to you in person sometime, so you can just see how bizarre it actually is. Because it's like as thick as fishing string, but it's definitely hair. I mean, I've had that confirmed over and over and over again. Like, yes, whatever this is definitely hair from a living, breathing creature. But I just haven't had.
Someone gave me this one too, and it's kind of interesting how the round curlness of it. So the guy in Oregon, I want to say he found it. It's on one of my episodes. He found it in like a skull boneyard pit, and it has that same kind of thick roundness, and I gave some to a couple people to have that one tested too. But the first lock I had that he gave to me looked really similar to that, but it was a darker color, but it
Huh.
felt a lot coarser. It felt like fishing line or something.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to put it side by side with some of mine and see how it looks under a microscope.
Yeah, we can definitely check that out. I think he got it tested and they said it was inconclusive, and people were trying to tell him it was horsehair too, and he's like, "It's not horsehair."
Yeah,
So that's what everyone seems to go to, but it's like, no, he was really adamant it was not horsehair.
that's I've had quite a few people. I've only had one microscopic assessment done where the guy was trying to convince me that it was horsehair. All the other ones has been kind of they're unsure of or whatever. But the guy that tried to tell me it's horsehair, he told me that it's horsehair from 4 different horses. And I said, I have a huge problem with that because I have locks that prove that it all came from one source. If it was all wadded up in a tangled ball, I could get behind, okay, maybe it is somebody brushing out a bunch of different horses and it's just this, but that's not what it, I mean, they were clear, curly locks, all entwined, all the same length. So I know whatever it is, it originated from one creature. And that guy, I discarded his assessment because of the he said it was 4 different horses. But then I had another person look at it, and because it has a medulla, he said, because you can find a medulla. Some of them have very faint medulla. Some of them have a more pronounced medulla. But he told me, oh, it has a medulla, so it can't be Sasquatch hair. But what's interesting about that is, according to Melba Ketchum, cryptid hair, Sasquatch hair absolutely has a medulla. And that myth of no medulla has probably led so many people to disregard potential Sasquatch hair, because hair without a medulla is an anomaly no matter what. And you can find some humans' hair will not have a medulla. And what we realized when we were looking at the hair with the microscope is, if you put that hair in a slide and you look at it with the microscope, you can't find the medulla. There's no medulla. But then if you properly glue the slide together like you're supposed to, you will find the medulla. And so I'm willing to bet money that the no medulla myth started because somebody had 1, maybe 2 strands of hair. So they didn't want to lock it into a slide forever, permanently sealed. And they were examining it with the microscope and they couldn't find the medulla. So I think the whole no medulla thing about Sasquatch hair is a myth that came out of people doing improper work. And because of that, it's probably led multiple people with good quality Bigfoot hair to be told, no, it's no good. There's no medulla, or if it has the medulla. So it's kind of a nightmare. The whole thing, getting your hair figured out, getting your hair with any kind of definitive answer it's a nightmare because there's not enough control. There's not enough Bigfoot hair to compare it to make any real microscopic assessment off of it.
Well, and
And
one
so,
thought I had about that too was I talked to one older hunter. He's in his 80s and he actually still goes out on elk hunts. But he's saying he's seen them back in the 1960s and 70s. And I'm like, what'd they look like? And he's like, they're huge. They're just these huge, massive creatures. And you see them like you down in the valley. And I go, well, what color are they? And he had to think about it for a second. And he goes, well, the one I saw was like multicolored, like a wolf, like different colors of like grays. And that's
yeah,
interesting because that's what you have is like multicolor. And even the picture you have of one across from the water, it's multicolored. So that actually makes sense. So saying it's from 4 different sources, it actually makes more sense that it would just have different colors. And it actually reminds me when I used to, I had a German Shepherd, and when I would brush him, I would get all these different colors out of his coat. And I'm thinking,
yeah,
why would they have different colors in one coat?
absolutely. Like my head of hair, my hair turns really blonde in the summer. But if you like open up my hair, you can find really dark strands. You can find really white strands. And so, I mean, I think a lot of creatures, people, whatever, are going to have multicolored hair. It's pretty common.
Yeah, and even brushing the dog, I could almost get like a whole nother dog out of that German Shepherd brushing him. So who knows if this is even just like their natural shed, like it's just sitting there walking and like pulling its hair off
Yeah.
of it.
Well, and I
I
have
had.
strands of hair that are pretty long, like 14 inches long. And you can see where half of that hair will be a really light brown. And then the other half will be a dark brown on one strand. And so that's the half that was in the sun all summer long, getting hammered and bleached by the sun. And then the other half will be from the winter. And so it really proves that hair, whatever it came off of, is from a creature that's out in the sun, out in the world. And it's just kind of interesting to see, because that's my hair does that. My hair changes. My hair will turn bright white if I'm out in the sun all summer.
Yeah. That's really interesting. What are your tools? Because I know, so I put your GoFundMe at the top of the link there. You're wanting to use that to like maybe get out and do some more research and some more tools. Can you tell us about the tools that you've used, like what kind of spotting scopes that you like, or drones or anything like that, and then what you'd like to get going forward to help with your research?
Yeah, well, currently, I have a couple different spotting scopes I use. They're nothing special. I have one right here. And I don't even know what brand this one is. Tasco. And then the other one that hooks to my cell phone, I don't even know what brand it is, to be honest with you, because when I jumped into this research after I had my sighting, I gathered up everything I could. And, I was on a budget. I couldn't just go out and buy all the top of the line stuff. And this scope my dad gave me, because he'd had it for years and just wasn't using it. But my main camera is a Sony RX10, and it has a really good zoom. And when I bought it, it was and it might still be, but at that time period, it was the leading go-to camera for wildlife, quick shooting, and stuff like that. And I have a couple different night vision cameras that I use, but they're on the cheaper side. I don't have any kind of super high-end stuff. It's too expensive. And every time I go out on a research mission, I'm away from work, and it's between fuel and the food and the loss of wage. It's already too expensive for me to get top of the line anything. The camera I bought was kind of one of the bigger splurges I got. And the e-bike I bought, I dropped, I don't know, almost $2,000 on that e-bike, but I only had that thing for about a month, and it got ran over and it got destroyed. And like the GoFundMe is, I don't have exact specific things like picked out that I want to buy. There's so many different things I want, but I want a high-end, good infrared night vision. If I could get one on a drone, that would be amazing if I could afford one of those. But I just need some really good long distance night vision. And that's kind of hard to come by, because the night vision stuff I have, it works pretty good as long as you're within 30, 40, 50 feet. But anything beyond that, you can't see. And so in a perfect world, if I had the unlimited budget, I would go and I would get an awesome drone, because I've tried using some drones out there. There's some cheap drones, and they were just a nightmare, and the footage was garbage. And one of the drones disappeared, and I've never found it. I don't even care about it. But if I had the money to get that kind of stuff, I would, and it would make a world of difference in the research I'm doing. But it's, like I said, everything's just so expensive. I've looked online at all these different pieces of equipment that I want, but I haven't even really honed in on exactly which ones I want, because it all would come down to the budget. It'd all have to be based off of what I can afford. Like some of the I think they're the DIJ or something drones look really nice, really cool, but their prices vary. And I would probably buy a used one if I were to buy one at all, just to save money on it, because it's really expensive. You know, when I go out doing this stuff, everything, the food, the fuel, the SD cards, especially the time away from work, because that's burning up money. And then even when I come back and try to make the videos, I pay somebody to help me do all that, because I can't do it on my own. And so really this endeavor has just murdered my savings account. Oh yeah, I'm not supposed to say that, huh? It's
all right.
it's really, yeah, it gets expensive. And so yeah, I had a few viewers ask me if I had a donation option, and I didn't at the time. And so that motivated me to set up the GoFundMe, and was like, okay, if somebody asks, I can just refer them to the GoFundMe. But I mean,
Yeah,
I know how
think-
people
yeah.
are. I don't expect to get tons of money. It'd be great, but I'm not expecting it really.
I don't think people realize like what goes into this. I've watched a few other channels that really go through all that night vision and drone, and then I think like, oh, it'd be fun to go get something. But then when I hear that they've invested like 10 grand into a drone or this or that, I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, they're really putting a lot into this.
Yeah.
And hearing your side of it, that's pretty crazy what you've put into it, or even just trying to get back into those spots, and with
Yeah.
your accidents and everything. And then people just watch on the other side of the screen and kind of go, well, why don't you just go back in there and do this, that? It's like, there's so much that goes into that.
Oh, I know. Yeah, there
So
is.
much.
And
And thank
people
you for
ask
everything
me
you do.
the same questions, like, oh, why don't you just get a drone? And it's like, I want a drone, and I've tried to use drones, but there's so much tree and so much stuff in the way that you have to have a really good drone with good obstacle avoidance, and you have to be good at flying the thing. And like when I did that Bigfoot beach walk video, it was really, really shaky. But if anybody's ever played with photography stuff, when you're zoomed a mile and you're trying to hold it in your hand, it doesn't matter if you got nerves of steel, or you just can't. No matter what, there's going to be some wobble. Because anytime you're zoomed out like that, you just touch or bump anything, it wobbles. I have a telescope that can get me pretty good footage for about 3 miles away, and I have this cheap digital camera that hooks up to the telescope. And I've tried to use it out in the field, but the problem is, it has to be, you can't touch it. You have to zoom in on what you're finding, and you have to completely leave it totally still. Because if you even bump the screen to hit the controls on the camera, the whole screen just goes. And so I quit even trying to use the telescope, because it just required so much effort and had to be and the wind would blow. I'd have it all set up, and I'd be trying to look at something 3 miles away, and then the wind would start blowing, and it just starts, it's so hard. It's so hard to get good footage and everything. It's easy to be an armchair quarterback and judge people, but going out there doing it yourself, it really opens your eyes to what goes into all this. It's a major, major undertaking.
Yeah, and I appreciate everything you're doing, because I've even tried to get footage of things, and I realize how difficult it is. So I applaud you what you have gotten. You've done a really outstanding job. So
yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I've even compared a 300 millimeter camera. I have a Canon Rebel compared to my iPhone 15, and from acres away, and it almost feels like the iPhone 15 does better, but still not good enough if you're trying to get like micro detail. And I already know someone would go, oh, well, that's just somebody in a suit, or that's a a lot of people say, oh, it's a tree, and it's like, obviously it's not a tree, it has a face on it.
Yeah, I know. My buddy has a brand new iPhone, and I was playing with it out in the woods, and I was blown away with how good that thing worked. His iPhone was zooming in almost as good as my $1,800 camera. I was shocked. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I do want to get a better cell phone too, because my cell phone's just an older
I think that
Android
might be
thing.
the way to go because I can't even get the stars with my Rebel. I actually bought that. I can get the moon really good, but every setting I've tried to get stars, it just like won't even take the picture. But my iPhone 15, I've gotten northern lights. I've gotten really good star pictures. It's
Yeah,
crazy how good they're getting. And then the other day, because I drive in areas where there's been a lot of Bigfoot reports, like running across the roads and stuff. So I always drive with the dash cam, and my thought was like, well, maybe I'll get one on a dash cam. Well, the other day I had a coyote. At first I thought it was a deer, and as I'm driving up into it, and this is an area where I've had like a rock hit my windshield, like right at that spot. So there's a lot of wildlife moving through.
wow.
I get close and I see a coyote. So all day I couldn't wait to get home to like post this coyote footage I got. Well, I got home and it looked like a blob. I was so mad. I was like, oh
Yeah,
no, I saw it. I could see like the multicolors in it, like that hair you have, and but you can't see it. So, and it's a 4K dash cam. Someone goes, "Oh, you should get a 4K dash cam." My friend, and I go, "Well, it is a 4K dash cam." So then I tried it with my phone the next day filming, and the detail was actually better on the iPhone. So now
yeah,
what I'm going to do is just have the phone set up when I'm driving, and then I can just delete the videos after, drives, and then just see if I capture anything with that.
yeah. I used to
So,
wear a body cam when I still have my body cam. I just don't use it a lot. But because when first started going out, I had a helmet cam, I had a body cam, and I had a hanky in my hand. But I would end up with so many SD cards and so much footage to go through, and most of the footage just wouldn't be usable because it'd be too bouncy or shaky because your body cam's always bouncing and your helmet cam's always all over the place. And so I have calmed down on having cameras all over me like I used to, but it just became too much work trying to edit all that footage and trying to use it for anything, and then the expense of all the SD cards. And so I'm getting better and better. I'm getting better with my camera, and I'm getting better at making videos and knowing when I should and shouldn't film. And but it's just hard, I mean, even if you're out in the woods walking and a Sasquatch runs by, I mean, you got to get your camera ready, turn it on, catch it, zoom in, and it's hard. It's super hard. I see wildlife all the time, and I miss those shots because they're gone as soon as you see them.
yeah.
Foxes and coyotes and bears, and I get a lot of those on my trail cam, but not in person shooting. It's hard. It's a chore.
Yeah, it
You
seems like
said
you almost
you
have to
had
get it
some.
by surprise.
You said you had some cleaned up footage of the redhead thing.
Not yet. I saw that one last night, but I was gonna
Oh,
try and
okay.
clean that one up. So I'll work on that tonight. I do have cleaned up footage of the one that was behind you if you want to see that.
Yeah.
Let's see. So when was this one? Like pretty recent?
Yeah. The one that you're talking that steps behind the tree.
Yeah, so the one behind the tree.
Yeah. That was on my last actual research mission where I was up there for 4 nights. And
Okay.
that was I think that was on my 3rd day up there. That was when Colin came out, and he and I found a lot of really cool stuff. That was the same trip where we found the shattered agate that looked like potential tool making had been going on. I don't know if you've ever seen that video or not,
I
but
don't think I've seen that one yet.
so there's an area I call Dead Canyon, and in Dead Canyon there was a slaughtered elk that was left right by one of my trail cams, and it was the whole body of the elk, skull, spine, rib cage, everything. And a few months later, when I went down there with Colin, we were approaching that kill site of where the elk was found. And there was a big agate, yay big, that had been shattered. And there were pieces of this agate everywhere. And when you break agate like that, it shatters like obsidian. And it's the same exact type of stone that the Native Americans would have used to make arrowheads and spearheads and stuff like that. And there were razor sharp pieces of it everywhere. And there was a footprint in the gravel right by the shattered agates. And so that was the first time I'd ever even considered that these Sasquatch beings would ever sharpen rocks or use homemade tools like that. And obviously, I don't know if that's what created that, but I know that people haven't been in there because I have trail cams all over in there, and people were never on my trail cams. And those type of agates are so dense, so hard, they don't break on their own. You can't expect that agate to just shatter on its own. It had to have been broken by something somehow. And on that same walk, as we continued further into the canyon and I got to where the elk carcass was at, my trail cam's on the other side of the river. So I went across the river to my trail cam, and underneath my trail cam, laying on the ground, was a Chinook salmon, dead, that had been peeled apart. So, and it was left underneath my trail cam as if it was like a gift or a message. It was so insane. And to be able to pull the head off of a Chinook salmon like that, there's no natural animal that does that. There's animals that could bite and chew the head off of a salmon, but even me, like, with all my strength, I don't know if I could stick my fingers in the gills of a salmon and break the head off of it. It's harder than you would think. And so that I found this salmon underneath my trail cam, laying there beheaded. The head was next to it. The body was there. And you could even see where the meat of the salmon had been smashed as the head and the body were pulled apart. And those two discoveries, the shattered rock and the shattered agate, those all happened in the same 30-minute period. Crazy things to find, but the fish for me has been one of the biggest discoveries I've made, because if I'm reading that fish correctly, that was a gift. They killed a salmon, because the salmon run through that river a few times a year. And so what I believe that was a salmon that they had killed, beheaded, and left there underneath my trail cam as an offering, as a gift, because I've left a lot of food for them over the years. I leave apples and oranges and bananas, and I've left peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And I mean, I've left a lot of food for them over the period I've been out there. And I strongly, strongly believe that was what that was a returning the favor. Here's a fish. Unfortunately, in the moment when I found that fish beheaded and laying there, I didn't recognize it as a gift. It kind of freaked me out. And I thought, like, maybe I had disturbed an animal that was getting ready to eat. But it wasn't till later, after we left, and I started thinking about that fish and the way in which it was found and where it was found, and then looked at the footage of that fish and could see that it was definitely had been peeled apart in a way that just doesn't make any sense for a bear or a bobcat or anything. Could not have done that. And so that to me is the ultimate sign that there's something to come, that in the future there's going to be some kind of interaction with these beings, because it seems to me that they're already willing to trade food and gift me. And so I'm pretty eager to get out there and see what else can come of this.
Here's this one too. So this rock was here, and then you actually built these on it. And then what's that there?
So that was just a rock that I found on a log. That's right next to the upside down tree site. And that rock just shouldn't have been on that log. There's no explanation for Mother Nature to pick up a big rock like that and set it on top of a log. And so I just piled those rocks on top of it just for the hell of it. And I left I think it's an apple and an orange there beside it.
How heavy was this rock? Did you try to lift it?
Yeah, it was probably a 15, maybe 20-pound rock. Not huge, but a decent sized rock, way bigger than anything that wind or water would have picked up and placed there.
Yeah, that's crazy. Why? Oh, rock wouldn't just be on a downed What do you call
Yeah,
that? A
and
log, a tree?
I have found a lot of rocks picked up and left in weird places now. That's becoming a reoccurring theme in there. But at
And then
that
in this
time period, I hadn't found a lot. That was kind of a new thing.
video too, there's a lot of trees that are like upside down and like shoved in the ground. Why do you think they do that?
Um, well, at the time I made that video, I had random theories on it. I didn't really have a strong theory on it, but now because of how many of them I've found and because of multiple reasons, I think that they impale them into the ground because they want them to rot quicker. And by when the wood rots, it fills with grubs, it fills with wood-eating insects, and then they can easily come in and find these logs full of grubs, and they can pull them out of the ground and they can peel it open and get the grubs, because evidence of them feeding on grubs is everywhere in there. Even we didn't talk about this, but the first sighting I ever had where that Sasquatch stayed in one place for an hour or longer, I found out the next day that there was a big stump right there. And so it was at a stump the whole time. And I fully suspect or believe that he was tearing apart the stump looking for grubs. And I have repeatedly found evidence of them tearing stuff apart looking for grubs. And now, because there's quite literally hundreds of these logs impaled into the ground up there now, I think that that's a grub farm. I really do. I think that that is what they're doing. They stab them into the ground so they rot, and they can come back in a season or two and pull them out and break them apart, and there'll be grubs in there. So it's like a primitive farm for grubs is all across my research area now. And there's a lot more to that theory, but that's just sort of a simple summarize of it.
Now you're a tree expert. I always hear stuff, out in the world about like forest fires and forest management and how there needs to be more forest management type stuff. Not really my area of expertise, but what are your thoughts on Sasquatch, Bigfoot, like knocking down so many trees or doing this type of tree activity? Do you think it actually helps the forest out?
I don't know if it necessarily helps the forest or not. I don't think it harms it at all, because I think Sasquatch are conscientious about stuff like that. I don't think that they would ever intentionally just harm the forest, but they do seem to do their own type of manipulation, like playing with the trees, breaking them and altering them. And I don't know if they're doing it just because they're bored. I would like to think there's more to it than that. But I have been finding now these spiral trees. We call them braided trees. And like one of these trees, it's two trees that are just wrapped around each other. And these are conifer trees, timber trees. In every sense of the natural way these trees behave, they want to grow straight and go up. They never want to twist and wrap and do weird stuff. You will find that on deciduous trees a little bit more, but the fact that it's conifer trees that I'm finding that have been spiraled and twisted in the weirdest way, it shows intent and manipulation. Like, to create the spiral trees would take 2 decades of continuously bending and forcing this tree to do this. It's just bizarre. And I'm finding so much of this type of stuff out there that I wish I could understand why they do it, but it might just be something as simple as artistic boredom. I don't know. But I don't think they intentionally would ever like harm the forest or anything. But then again, I did find a place one time where approximately 25 trees, full-grown trees, had all just been knocked down in a row of each other. And it was a really weird finding. And it seemed as if a big Sasquatch came through there and just started knocking trees over, because some of them were uprooted and had fallen over and their roots popped out. But then some of them, the roots stayed and the tree had just been broke clean off of its stump. And the force to do that is beyond comprehension. The strength needed to do that. But there was, no tracks to a machine. There was no evidence of anything going in there and doing this. And it was really weird because it was about 30 feet wide and about 100 feet long, of approximately 25 some trees. And it almost looked like a UFO came down and just flew through the trees and just blasted all these trees down and then flew off. It was the weirdest thing. And so I suspect that was done by a Sasquatch, because there's a lot of evidence of the Sasquatch in this area. And I can't prove it or whatever, but it's impossible to try to say it was done by snow or wind or ice, because in the way in which it was. It's only 30 feet wide, so wind isn't going to come through and just create this one little channel of destruction. If wind is going to create destruction, it's going to be sort of an even disbursement all over the place. And so it's just a very unnatural, very weird thing that I found that I can't make any sense of. But to kind of answer your question, I would suppose if that was a Sasquatch, they weren't really worrying about forest health in that situation. They were just apparently just uprooting trees just to show how strong they are or something. I don't know.
That's crazy. What else have you seen out there that you'd like to share on the show? Anything that really stood out to you, that maybe it's a discovery that you found that just kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, there's a lot. But some of the trail cam captures I've had are pretty insane. Where in the beginning, when I was putting trail cams out, a lot of other researchers would give me grief about trail cams, that it's disrespectful and it's invasive, and the Sasquatch will just leave if you put trail cams out. And I heard all that, and I disagree with all that. And I don't think the Sasquatch care about trail cams one little bit. And on my first trail cam anomaly that I captured was this blob of white light moving through the trees in broad daylight. And you can see it's a series of pictures, and you got to click through them, and you can see this blob of white light moving through the trees. And in one of the shots, you can see a footprint looking indentation appear as this blob of white light goes by. Like, with your abilities to zoom in on stuff, that would be something that I would love to see you zoom in and see what you can find on that.
Okay.
And then another trail cam capture that's super weird is this. It's a nighttime shot, and it looks like a bipedal looking humanoid thing, but it's almost like you can see through it. It's real translucent, transparent looking, and it just appears in the middle of the shot of the trail cam, which that in itself doesn't make any sense, because there should have been pictures taken as it entered from either the left or the right. For it to just appear in the middle of the shot doesn't make any sense. And then there's a little bit of movement through a few pictures, but it's just a real subtle movement, and then it just disappears. Poof, it's gone. And then there's 3 or 4 more pictures, but it's this black mass that you can't really make sense of, but you see some movement within that black mass because it continued to trigger the trail cam to keep taking pictures. And, I don't know for sure what any of that means or what it is, but it all fits in with many other accounts, of these beings being able to disappear, or these beings being associated with orbs and weird lights. And and all that. And it's just, the more I've gone down this rabbit hole of research, the more I learn that the truth is just far stranger than fiction. This stuff gets weirder and weirder.
Okay, and
And
then I think
I'm more and more leaning towards, being a part of the whole woo thing people call it, which originally I didn't want anything to do with the woo aspect of all this. But if you spend enough time in the area with these creatures, and you get to know anything about these creatures, you are going to have to open your eyes to the woo side of them, because you just can't deny it after you've been out there enough.
yeah, what are your thoughts on paranormal versus not paranormal?
I'm very much aware that there's a paranormal aspect to these creatures, for lack of a better word. I didn't want there to be in the beginning, I really didn't want there to be. Was really hoping to come at all this with a real scientific approach and try to appeal to the non-believers, because getting the non-believers to accept Bigfoot is one thing, and then getting them to accept that Bigfoot has these magical, unbelievable abilities, that's a whole nother thing. But it's true and it's real, and they are paranormal, for whatever that means. I don't know, but they have abilities that don't make any sense. I mean, from the way we're all programmed to see reality and programmed to understand science, it's a whole different world. The truth of them, and probably the truth of us, and everything. We're just so out of touch. And the deeper I've gone down the Sasquatch thing, is just showed me more and more and more how out of touch we are. Because obviously I know these things exist, and the abilities they seem to have, the gifts they seem to have, aren't supposed to exist in the way that we've been programmed to understand existence and reality. And yet there they are. And I've been experiencing this stuff firsthand. Now I'm getting it on my trail cam. I had a vocalization experience one time where something screamed at me in my tent, woke me up, got me out of my tent. And as I'm trying to make sense of this crazy sound that was just blasted through my tent, I realized the apple that I had set out in front of a trail cam right by my tent was gone. And so I got real excited, and I got the chip out of the trail cam, and I'm looking on my little chip reader, and the apple was there, apple was there, apple was there, and then the apple's just gone, disappeared. Now,
Wow.
to pick up an apple and leave with it without being photographed, I mean, a butterfly can't fly in front of my trail cam without it getting a picture taken of it. A little tiny bird or anything, you trail cam, click, 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 it takes pictures. And this one was on like a 5-second video mode. So there should have been a video explaining where that apple went, and the apple was just gone, disappeared, no explanation. And so that moment was the first time I ever started thinking, okay, wow, there might be something to this woo stuff after all. And then I started getting the really weird anomalies on my trail cam. And
What kind of trail cam do you like?
oh, I have probably 8 or 9 different trail cams.
Any
But they're
favorite
all
brand?
on the cheaper side, though. None of them are super high end. But what's crazy is the anomalies that have been captured are on the cheapest trail cam I own, and I have 3 of them. And
Interesting.
it's called like Monster. I think the word monster was on it. It's a cheap trail cam I bought used off of Marketplace. And it doesn't even have video. It only takes photographs. It's an old trail cam. And for some reason, that's the trail cam. That's the model that has been capturing the weird stuff. And so I don't know enough about trail cams to recommend one over the other, but if I ever see any of these cheap trail cams for sale, I'm buying them up, because for some reason they seem to be the ones that capture this stuff. It doesn't make any sense, but that's just what I've experienced.
Have
But
you heard about them like seeing the red lights and being kind of afraid of that?
yeah, oh yeah, I've heard all about that. And I think it's all exaggerations. I do think that the Sasquatch know the trail cams are there somehow, because I didn't get into this, but the elk carcass that I told you about, that was left right within like a few paces of being visible by my trail cam, but it was just outside of my trail cam. So that was pretty weird. And I was like, I had to consider, okay, are they trying to mess with me? Are they just toying with me? Because something had to bring that elk there and put the body there. And then something also took all of the big leg bones from that elk and made a pile of big bones over here and left the other bones over here. So something separated and organized the bones. So there's no animals that do that in nature. And all of that took place just outshot of this trail cam. Then months later, I come back and something went in there and beheaded that fish and left it directly underneath that same trail cam. And also, right in that same area, something has been picking up these big agates and putting them on top of boulders. And all of that is going on right next to this trail cam. Yet the trail cam never captures any of it, because I think that they're kind of like mocking my trail cam. And I think that they are letting me know that they're aware of me and they know what I'm doing. And I think that the trail cams are just a joke to them, because there's been times where they've entered my campsite while I'm in my tent sleeping. I've had that happen 3 times now while I'm in the tent. And they probably entered the camp other times, but 3 times now they've done something to make it very apparent that they were there. At the time they screamed at me and I came out and the apple was gone. We just kind of talked about that. Then on the last trip up there with Colin, he's the guy that was with me when I found the fish and found the shattered agate. And on our last morning there, he wakes me up to show me that there was footprints through our campsite right next to my truck. And we got pictures of this, and I casted one of these footprints as well. But clear as day footprints, and we were in the tent sleeping just 25 feet away. And then on another trip, I was in the camp, sleeping in the tent, and my phone woke me up at 4 a.m. And I woke up to a giant shadow standing over my tent. And once I realized there was something above my tent, and it was just standing there. I could see the movement of it going back and forth. And I got my camera, I turned my camera on, it made some noise, and that shadow just bolted away silently, but gone. Just that shadow was gone as soon as I turned the camera on. And so what's weird about all this is I set trail cams up while I'm camping in my camp a lot of the times. But I'll check them in the morning and there's no footage, no nothing. And so there was the first time I ever saw one in the campsite was the one standing over my tent. And that particular night when I went to bed, I just didn't turn the trail cams on. I didn't think about it. I just spaced it, or I don't know. The trail cams just got forgotten. And then it's just like a coincidence that night I didn't set up the trail cams is the night they come into the campsite and do that. And so after that happened, I have very rarely set the trail cams up at night, because I think in some weird way they know that those trail cams are there. And the trail cams, they know how to avoid them. And apparently they can actually go right in front of them and not be photoed or recorded, which sounds like madness, but that is what I've experienced, and it's what I've come to believe. And so long story short, I just think the trail cams mean nothing to them. I don't think they're intimidated by them. I don't think they care about them. I think they have abilities to just avoid them, or like I said, go in front of them and not even be recorded. And so
Yeah.
I'll still keep using trail cams, even though I don't have high expectations for them, but they're just the tool I have, and I will continue to use them.
I don't know what you think about like this theory, but one of my friends, Tex from Texas Front Porch, he's pretty awesome. And he was saying like the ones that have like the red light, if you get some that I might be saying this right, the incandescent type of styles, but have that to kind of divert it to the other style of trail cam. That might be a way to kind of trick them to go to like a different kind of trail cam.
Yeah. No, and I'm going to do something like that, actually. I'm going to set up mirrors, big mirrors, and I'm going to have the trail cam aimed at the mirror. I'm going to use 3 different mirrors, so it's pulling multiple perspectives from different angles in the woods. But if they come near that mirror in certain ways, some image of them will hit that mirror. And that I'm gonna try a bunch of weird stuff.
What if you did it from like up above, like up in the tree, like facing down? So if it would like walk under it, I wonder if that would be a good position.
I want to do that as well. I want to get some up way high in the trees where they won't even be thinking about that. And I'm going to try all kinds of stuff, but I don't think you can outsmart these beings. I mean, I'm still going to try, but I don't have high expectations that you can outsmart them. And if I had more money, I would get a bunch of these trail cams that you can hook up to their satellite, so I can actually check trail cams at home. And they're not crazy expensive, but they're just a little outside of what I can afford right now. But eventually I'm going to have a bunch of those trail cams set up, and I can just monitor them from right here in my studio. And that'll be cool. But
that would be really cool. They're like called cellular, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of different models that do that now.
And you've been on a few other podcasts already. Whose shows have you been on already?
Oh, I went on. I've been on a bunch of them. Damn, I'm horrible with names of shows. I went on Bigfoot, Bigfoot Society. I went on I think I've been on all of them. I'm just so horrible with names. All of a sudden, I'm having a massive brain fart.
You were on Sasquatch Theory with Miguel, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe I did that Sasquatch Theory, and I did like Wes Germer's show. Was that Big Sasquatch Chronicles or something?
And you were just on Flash of Beauty.
Yeah, I did Flash of Beauty. That was real recent that I did Flash of Beauty.
That was a good one.
I've been on a bunch of them. Sorry, my brain's not working.
No, it's all good. I was thinking of Sasquatch Theory. He's kind of got a lot of different drones and like different trail cams and stuff. So that's a good one to check out too for the boots on the ground like equipment to use. He's one of my favorite channels for that. I don't have you watched any of his like on equipment or anything?
Not on the equipment, no, but I've seen the show. I've watched the show a bit.
Okay. Yeah, you ought to check out some of his equipment stuff on there. He's kind of shows some of the thermal drones and kind of what brands to kind of.
Yeah, no, I will for sure, because that's something I definitely need to figure out. And I might be getting some money for getting ran over. I don't know. It's in the works if I'll get money or not. But if that lawsuit comes my way someday and I get money, I'm gonna get some of the best equipment I can get. And so I will check that out, because I'm all for advice on what works well, because I don't really know anything about that high-end equipment.
Okay, yeah, and I'm gonna try and do some more research on what kind of stuff to get, and it's something I'm really interested in too, is the tools and equipment to get that's actually worth the money. I was gonna show the deer picture too. I was talking to BMR actually, and he said it's okay if we show that. He's the one that was just showing that cool kangaroo picture over on his show the other day. But yeah, just a disclaimer for everyone. We're going to show a deer, content warning, graphic content warning. Do you want to tell us about it a little bit before we show it?
Sure. Yeah. So I was walking my dog late at night when I was getting ready to go out of town, and I had a house sitter coming to watch the dog in the house. So I just took her on a walk right before we were going to leave to the airport. We were going to be gone for a week. And this deer was just up the road from my house, in a neighbor's yard, but it's not really like just their front yard. It's kind of like a field that's adjacent to their house. So it is kind of secluded and kind of treed in, but it's still a housing development, houses in every direction. And my dog was sniffing the deer, and I come up on my dog, like, what are you doing? And I look down with the flashlight on my cell phone because it's pitch black right there. And this deer had its front legs were ripped clean off, and its insides, it was missing everything: heart, lung, kidneys, intestines, everything was gone. The only thing untouched was the stomach sac, the bile sac, which is just stomach acid and just garbage. And you have to be pretty careful not to rupture that stomach sac. And so whatever slaughtered this deer and harvested it, did it in a way where they were careful to not rupture that sac, even though the deer looked like it'd been hit by a train. I mean, the front legs were just gone. All its innards were ripped out. So it was just a really bizarre thing to find in my neighborhood of all places.
I'm going to actually share it now too. So just in case anyone has like a stomach for this stuff, look away for a minute. So I'm going to add this on here. So what makes you is there Sasquatch reports in this area?
No, not at all. Where I live, I've never heard of anybody seeing one.
Okay. What else about it, like around like the ribs and all this area, does this seem like what to you would stand out to you that it wouldn't be like coyote or cougar?
So what's weird about it is there's no blood in the grass. Like there should have been a bunch of blood and guts and stuff around it, and there wasn't. And so whatever did that to that deer was probably carrying that deer, and my dog and I spooked it, and it dropped it, and it went and hid. And it's just, there shouldn't be predators in my neighborhood. If you knew where I lived, you'd understand it. It was just such a weird thing to find in my neighborhood. And I don't know that it wasn't a cougar or a bear, because those were the only two natural predators that you could potentially blame that on. A pack of coyotes, they wouldn't have been moving it. They would have been tearing it apart wherever they killed it at. And coyotes don't take down deer. They'll eat a deer if they find a dead deer, but that was a fresh killed deer, and it was harvested methodically. And it was just super weird, and there's not any good explanation for it. And so it just sent me down that rabbit hole of looking into weird stuff, because it just didn't make any sense. But like I said, I have no clue on that deer. It was not in my research area where the Sasquatch are, but it just played a part in getting me to where I am now, which is just a weird coincidence, because it's in some weird way, I think they're all correlated, but it's just my theory. It's just an opinion I have, because it's just another weird thing.
Did your dog, Paul wants to know, going back to the deer, did your dog pick up on anything? And then somebody else noted that it looks like it has a broken neck, and then somebody else said it looks like it was dropped there.
Yeah. So what question first? Sorry.
So did your dog pick up on anything?
No. When I found that deer, and I realized that there's a potential predator in the area that can do that to a deer, all I had was my dog. My dog's a 3-legged pit bull, and I had no weapons, no anything on me. I just wanted to get out of there. I took some pictures, and we were gone. I didn't even really analyze my dog's behavior at all. She was just sniffing the deer, and I got out of there. What was the other question?
Somebody says it looks like it has a broken neck. Did you notice that?
It does have a very crooked neck, and the condition of that deer, it very likely does have a broken neck because, like I said, the front legs are gone, just ripped clean off, and
Oh wow, yeah.
it had been pulverized and harvested in the weirdest way, and it potentially could have been dropped there by something up above. I have no idea, but it was just a really weird thing to find. And like I said, if you came through my neighborhood, you'd understand. It's just, you do see deer occasionally running through our neighborhood. It's not terribly uncommon to see a deer, but predators like that you are just unheard of out here. Nobody's ever seen a bear or a cougar in my neighborhood.
And this
It's
is in
really weird.
Washington? In Washington?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we have bears and cougars, but not where I live. They're up in the mountains. They're further away.
And Washington is like the number one sighting state of Sasquatch, like in the world, and like in the
Oh,
US.
really?
Yeah, Washington's the number one state with the reports.
Interesting. Yeah.
So yeah, you'll have to look up like Bigfoot Society. He actually has a new map, so you'll have to see if there's how many reports there are for like your area, and then BFRO. If you ever watch Bigfoot Dwarfs YouTube, he's always pulling up BFRO reports, and you might just look and see with that location if there's been any reports in your area. That'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as I know, I've never heard of any reports in the area that I live in, but I know other places further away where there's been reports. But I live in just such a housing development type place where it would be a weird place to see anything like that. But anything's possible.
I was actually talking to someone last week that met with a guy. It was a long time ago, but he was a sheriff up in Washington, and he's been on some websites and I think some documentaries. But he was driving along with his granddaughter, and he seen a Sasquatch standing there in someone's driveway with a deer under its arm. And when they pulled back to like take a look at it, it was already gone.
Wow.
So yeah, there have been reports of them with deer like in housing areas.
Huh. Yeah. And what I suspect is because when deer come into housing developments, like I said, in Ocean Shores, it's houses everywhere, but there's deer everywhere. And people start feeding them, and these deer become so tame and so complacent that I suspect that a Sasquatch would and will go into those areas at night and get them, because the deer, they've lost their natural fear. I mean, deer occasionally will, I live right by a park, and I'll see them in this park every now and then in my neighborhood, and I can go out with my camera and I can get within like 25 feet of them and just film them. Whereas up in the mountains and out in the wilderness, usually if a deer sees you, they're gone. They're taken off. And so I do suspect that Sasquatches will come into rural or non-rural places like housing developments and grab deer just because of that reason. Because they're just so tame and so comfortable, they'd be easy to kill.
Have you heard of any reports like up in your area or friends or anything where they've kind of followed along hunters and taken hunters' kill or anything like that?
Yeah, actually, I have a friend of mine who he killed a deer, and he had cleaned out all of its intestines and all the guts and all this stuff. And I think he had removed the head. I can't remember everything that he had, but he had a big old mess of like stuff he didn't want because he was going to have to pack this deer out. And so he'd taken everything he didn't want and made a pile, and he went over and he was washing up by the creek, and he got distracted and had to do something. And when he came back up, something had removed the entire gut pile and taken everything that he was going to discard. And he said that there's just no way it could have been grabbed up by dogs or anything, because it would have been all dragged and strewn about. he said it had to have been something big that could actually pick it all up and hold it and run off with it. And so he was convinced that was a Sasquatch, you know. Then that happened before I was involved with the subject, but I always remember hearing that story. And so yeah,
Yeah,
I do think they watch hunters and they will take stuff from them, sure.
yeah, we've got that video of you being watched by one. We'll show in the very end here. It's pretty good, and I have it zoomed in. But I have 2 reports here in Oregon, just to kind of help share with you for your research. One was a guy I met recently that came up from the Oregon coast. The first time I met him, and he's just kind of like, "Oh, what are you into?" And I'm like, "Well, like Bigfoot stuff." And he goes, "I've actually seen one." I'm like, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah, me and my buddy were out hunting on the Oregon coast, and we seen a couple grouse, which is like a pheasant, up in the trees, and there was 2 grouse, and so him and his buddy both get one. They shoot them, and they fall down on the ground in the forest. And he said there was this big log looking tree stump thing with moss growing all over it where they fell down, and the thing like gets up and turns over and grabs them and like takes off. And then another one
With both of them?
with both of them, and him and his
Wow.
buddy. You probably understand this because I go, well, what it looked like what, how, he goes, well, it took us like a minute and a half to like get down into the area, and there was feathers everywhere. And I go, well, what did it look like? And he goes, well, you couldn't really see it because it kind of took off through this like very narrow opening. And another hunter who I know said a couple years ago he was hunting, and there was like a clearing, and he got a deer through his scope, and before he knew it, what he thought was a bear at first came out of the woods and starts going for the deer, but he's looking at it through a scope, and it was like a giant like Sasquatch, a giant
Yeah.
tall like, black one. Yeah, so he said he popped off 3 shots near it, and it kind of did like a jump, and then it like took off through the woods. And I'm like, you wouldn't just let it have your deer? And he's like, no, that was my deer.
But it got away with it?
No, it didn't get the deer.
Oh, okay. A,
But the
a,
other
a
one
friend of mine he was in a weird part of Idaho living out there, and he looked into this clearing and he saw a buffalo and was like, oh, crazy, a buffalo. And he said it's this big, weird shaped creature, and it scurried off into the bushes, and he said it was huge. And he was all excited that he saw a buffalo, and he went into town and was telling the locals about the buffalo. And they're like, you're a moron. Buffaloes have never been in this area. They weren't in the past. They aren't now. There's never been a buffalo in this part of Idaho ever. And so he's convinced that it was a Bigfoot that was just on all 4s, and he just saw like a quick glimpse of it, and it disappeared into the bush.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bigfoot Society just had a podcast come out about something similar. I'll send you which one it was. It was one of his recent ones, and that one's pretty crazy. The guy's going over into like Lolo Pass by Mount Hood, and it's a big long story, but he hears like 4 of them, like a whole family of them. And I think he was saying that it looked like a big he thought it was a horse at first, but realized it was a Sasquatch running, kind of like what you're saying,
Yeah.
like the buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, these creatures are said to be huge. The one that I saw the first one I ever saw, I was up on the viewpoint. So it was so far away that I didn't know how big it was. I could see this body, but since that day, I was on that viewpoint another time, and I used my scope, and I found a bear in there. And that's when I realized that the size comparison from this bear to the Sasquatch that I saw could have picked up this bear and put it on its shoulder and carried it like a dog, like I can with my dog. So I'm pretty sure it was a pretty big one. And I suspect the bear could have been a smaller bear, but I mean, just the size difference is just so drastic between the bear to the Sasquatch. That was the first kind of realization that the one I saw was probably huge. But like I said, it was so far away that I can't say for sure. And I know that when I see elk, because I see elk from that viewpoint all the time, and I can't make out the elk with the naked eye very well. I have to use my camera, my scope to find the elk. But you could see the Sasquatch with the naked eye just clear as day. So I suspect it was a pretty big one.
And I'm gonna share the one now that you just got recently. So this is it's kind of like the regular, and then I slow it down.
Yeah.
Last time I was here, and now it's been broke off. But this is the one I want to go up and check out.
So it's like right down in this corner where you can see it. So I zoom in so you can
the footage gets real dark. It's hard to see. Is it getting dark on your screen?
Yeah, it did do that, but it almost looks like it's how it was edited, like when it was like zoomed out. But if you go back to I'll move this little guy right here, you can actually see it.
Yeah, I've seen the shot for sure.
Right there.
I'm just right now it's on a small screen, so it's hard to see. But
Okay.
yeah, I see the object.
For everyone watching, it almost looks like you can see like a head and shoulders right here. It almost looks like another one's like ducking down and watching, like you're being watched by two. So I'm going to play this a couple times so you can see it. So here it is in slow motion. You see a move right there. Let's go back and watch it again.
Yeah, and this was accidental footage. This that's why it's not zoomed in or anything. This was just kind of off, kind of in the corner of the screen, and I didn't even notice that this had happened. I think my eyes were probably looking off to the right as I panned the camera down to the left.
Yeah, if you look right here, this is the original footage. Right here, you'll see it move, like it's watching you, and then you see it move.
Yeah, and then
that's
dips behind that tree. And what's interesting about that is I didn't know that footage existed. I didn't know that had just happened. But Colin and I climbed this hill that's in front of us, and we actually find footprints right up there in those trees. And we talked about it in my video. They weren't like amazing footprints where we wanted to cast it, but it was clear, big, human-like footprints in the moss. And when I saw that footage and realized, like, something ducked behind that tree right when we were there, I strongly suspect that that's what the footprints were from, because it was right in the right area where that thing would have been. And it probably took off in a hurry because we were getting ready to climb that hill right towards that direction. And where that creature was at is right in close proximity to the braided tree, several braided trees, but one in particular. And right there is an area I call 5 arches, because there was 5 amazing arches right there, but they've been breaking off the arches now. So I don't know. And I was out there recently just to pull game camera chips, and they had broke another arch. So it's not really 5 arches now, but usually when they break an arch, they will build a new one. So I'm just kind of keeping an eye on it and seeing what happens. But there's a lot of weird activity all right in that area. That area is kind of a new spot.
I'm going to share this one again too. This one was really hard for me to get. I really tried to get this to like animate and try to get like a face, to get it to move, but I'll share this now.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I did a few other like sequences after it, but that's your picture, and that's what I used Grok to do that, and like to get it to like come alive and see what it saw.
Yeah, that is so cool. Super cool.
It kept seeing like a deer, then it kept seeing like a wolf. It was seeing an animal. It kept turning it into an animal. And then that first one, I never did say Sasquatch or Bigfoot. What was hard was like getting the clarity. So I had to like clean it up a little bit more. And then I just put it in there, and then it got it to like start walking and doing that. So that was its own interpretation of like what it saw. So it's seeing a mouth and nose.
Yeah, that's super cool. Because next time I go to Ocean Shores, I'm going to go down there and I'm going to really investigate that object. And I had a local go down and tell me that whatever is in that video is no longer there. He found the stumps, he claims. Yeah, and he said it's not there anymore. But he didn't send me a picture or video of it. He just emailed me
Ah,
and told me. And so
okay.
I have to go down there. I need to do a follow up to that video. And somebody in Australia sent me the whole video of Bigfoot Beach Walk, and they had stabilized the whole video. So all the shake is gone. And so with what you've made and with what they've made, and then when I go back, I'm gonna do a big follow-up video on that video, and it'll be actually a really cool video with what everybody's done. And so I need
I'm
to get to Ocean
excited.
Shores and get that done.
Well, going forward, what are your goals going forward for everyone? And everyone definitely like and subscribe, check out his GoFundMe, and what are your goals next?
Well, my goals are just to keep accumulating evidence and keep trying to bring non-believers into the fold of being a believer. But you know, the dream or the hope is that my channel grows, and you know, someday I would. It's just so hard to focus energy on this because it's, you know, the expense of it and all that. But if somehow I could get this channel to generate some kind of money, then I could justify all the time I spend out there. And you know, I hate to sound like that guy, like, oh, I'm all about money, but I can't morally or financially justify putting too much time into this because I have a house that's expensive and kids that are expensive, a wife that's expensive. So I'm just going to keep trying to get the evidence and keep trying to get people's attention, because if I can get, you know, the good footage and prove that these things are real, I mean, that's the goal of it all. And I hope to someday do a series of documentaries on all this and really just open a lot of people's minds up to everything. And you know, the only way I can get there is just to keep at it, stay in the woods doing what I'm doing. And you know, I have hopes that my channel will someday reach some kind of viewership so it can bring in a little bit of money to help assist all this. Because it's hard to make money off a YouTube channel, you know. I mean, you got to have insane views to make any money.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, I hope there's a way I can figure out how to generate a little income off of all this, because it's, when I started doing this prior to the sighting, was always pretty good at having a nice savings account or whatever, but it's devoured that. And yeah, it's been a rough year. It really has. After I got hurt, I missed out on a lot of work when I got ran over, and I've been playing catch up on that. And so it's
And
hard
are
to know when
you
I'll be able to get up there and keep at it, but I'm gonna. But it's
are you
been
wanting
a
to be
struggle.
are you wanting to be a guest on more shows? Would that help?
Yeah, I mean, anything I can do to promote my channel, I'll do. Absolutely.
Okay. And what's the best way to get a hold of you for anyone that might be interested in having you on their show? There's lots
Oh,
of people in here with shows, by the way. So anyone in here, you're more than welcome to contact Hugh.
yeah. I mean, anybody can email me at 11 superbeast 11 superbeast 11 at Gmail. Somebody can email me there, but I'm pretty good at responding to all my comments on my channel. So if
Okay.
anybody really wanted to reach out, you can just comment on one of my channels. I mean, I don't have insane views or, you know, too insane of comments. So I probably respond to 95 out of 100 comments that I get. So
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, that would be great to see on some more shows. So get you kind of out there and get more viewers and subscribers and supporters.
yeah. Yeah, no, I'm all for it. It's been my mission since I started doing this, that the whole point of it all is to just open people's eyes that these things are real. Because I was pretty convinced they weren't real. And so I can relate to a lot of people that are turned away by all the hoax videos and all the BS that surrounded this subject. But it's that's the real goal of what started me on this, was just to prove to people these things exist. Because if people can open their eyes to the fact that these things exist, I mean, what else? What else are we being lied to? What else is real that we think isn't? You know, it's just crazy that these creatures have been out in the woods, and somebody like me can go out there and find evidence of them. There's no way that some element of our government, of our science departments, of our biology departments, zoology departments, they know that these things exist. They have to know. And
I
yet
agree.
we're being told that they don't, that it's all a fiction, and that's infuriating.
Well,
And
and
so that,
yeah.
yeah.
I wonder how many times people like they don't think they exist, so they just their mind sees a shrub or they see a stump, and it's like would you have even noticed that that was a Bigfoot that first time had you not been having it in your mind? So maybe it was all synchronicity, that it was good that it was in your mind, so that way you maybe it like pre-prepared you for that event, so you were ready
Yeah.
for it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, and think of how many people have had a sighting, or maybe just a partial sighting, or they thought they saw one, but they're like, oh no, those aren't real. That wasn't a Bigfoot, you know, and they're not going
Right.
to tell anybody. It's weird. It's a lot like the UFO thing. It wasn't that long ago that people were laughing and mocking people that were into the UFO stuff. And
Right.
now that they've had congressional hearings, and now that it's out in the open a little more so, now all these people are like, oh, I always believed in the UFOs. It's like, no, you didn't. You used to make fun of people about it. And now you pretend that you're on board with it because it's okay to talk about it now. But I think that the Sasquatch thing will get there too. It's not quite there yet, but I think it's headed that direction, as long as people like us keep sharing info and force it into people's eyes. I think we'll get there. I just don't know how long it's going to take.
Well, and there was a question for you too from MSM asked, how far away was the beach Bigfoot?
Um, in the video, I always refer to it being about a mile away, but that's probably an exaggeration. It's probably less than half a mile away. It's hard to say because I'm looking out across this huge expanse of swamp, and looking at this other shoreline. And so I'd have to say probably a couple 100 yards, a few football fields. I don't know is the real answer. It's
And
a
you
good distance away, because with the naked eye, I couldn't even see it at all. And then my scope zooms pretty far, pretty good. And it's still kind of hard to see with the scope even. But a
and
lot of
you
that's
said
because it's
that
so shaky.
okay. You said that area had a lot of Bigfoot reports. Where were you hearing those reports from?
After because I bought a piece of property in Ocean Shores years ago, and I found this documentary on YouTube that was about Ocean Shores, Washington Bigfoot sightings. That's where I learned about it. And then since then, I've also found out that they do a big Squatch Fest there every year, and I've just heard more and more and more. But initially, it was that just a documentary on YouTube that opened my eyes to Bigfoot's being there.
Okay.
And there's a lot of I think I saw somewhere, I can't remember where I saw this at, but there was a chart of all these sightings all over Ocean Shores, and there was a lot of them. I mean, that peninsula was covered in them. And if
Really?
you're at all familiar with the peninsula of Ocean Shores, it's like the last place you would think that Bigfoots would go, because it's pretty much just packed with subdivisions and houses. But there is a lot of sand dunes and grassy, non-residential parts of it. And so I can see how the Sasquatch could navigate in and out of there. And the whole shoreline of that peninsula is good clamming. And like I said, there's deer everywhere on that peninsula. So I see why they would come there. And I believe that the surrounding mountains around ocean shores are probably plumb full of sign of Sasquatch. And that's a region that I hope to in the future really get out and spend some time investigating, because it's very similar to the area that I'm already investigating. It's just a slightly different region. But I mean, if the area that I'm investigating has got the populations it seems to have, I would assume that the mountains outside of ocean shores are probably equally plumb full of evidence too.
And then Flat Rock says that area is ripe. Grays Harbor County in general, hump tulips. Hopefully I'm not saying this wrong. Maybe you know how to say that. Wintucci and Moclips. I don't know if you recognize those areas.
Well, yeah, Moclips is another beach there, but I'm not familiar with Wintucci or and the hump tulips. Those are all just areas in there, beach areas.
Okay.
I believe it's a cool area. It really is, because it's all beaches, it's all beautiful beaches and all that, but it isn't just packed with $1 million homes and people. There's a lot of beautiful rural wilderness out there, but it's always cloudy and it rains a lot. But it's a beautiful place.
One of my friends, when he was growing up, he grew up in Alaska, partially Alaska and partially Hawaii, but he was saying that in Alaska, his dad was a fisherman, and then at night they saw this giant figure running across the shoreline. And when they went out there in the morning to check, it had like twisted all these like crab traps. So
Really?
So it's kind of like another shoreline, like seafood kind of deal.
Well, and that's something I forgot to mention about the Sasquatch was in my research area is I suspect that they go down to the shoreline to the Columbia, because they can get to the Columbia River pretty easily from my research area. I mean, it's a hike, it's a ways away, but that's nothing to them, I would suspect. But the Columbia River, you can go down to the Columbia River and get buckets and buckets and buckets of clams. They're not good eating, and for some reason you're not even allowed to eat them. But I made a video just recently, I haven't put on my channel, that shows just how there's just clam shells everywhere, millions and millions of clams. And so I think that the clams are probably the backup food source, that whenever they need it, it's there if they want to go get it. And there's so many berries in that area. I mean, you got multiple different kinds of huckleberry, salmonberry, blackberry, wild grapes. I mean, the berries are just endless out there, but that's only spring and summer. But then they got the mushrooms, tons and tons of mushrooms, and then they got the fish runs that come up the river, and then they got all the game, and so there's a lot of food sources. But I try to make sense of what would they eat when there's no berries and there's no mushrooms. Even the grubs in the winter, the grubs go underground and kind of go in hibernation mode. And so I suspect that that's when the clams would come in handy, because the clams are always there and they'll never run out of clams.
And you've been out there on your canoes, and because I was kind of looking at like aerial shots. I don't know exactly where you're at, but my thought would be, do you think that these guys would be like living on these like little micro islands, or they would be like swimming from like the States and like swimming to islands, or what do you think?
Oh, I think it's highly likely that they've been on those islands. Yeah. I mean, I obviously don't know for sure, but I suspect they're good swimmers. And I think they go across that river. I think they're all over both sides of the Columbia River, because there's just so much rural land in there, and there's so many little rivers and streams coming off that thing, and there's food everywhere for them. I think they're all over that shoreline.
Have you heard?
It depends on what part, though.
Okay. Have you heard of anything? I recently heard about, I think, is it the Klickitat cat, or the cat that's up in that area in the Columbia? Like the
Well,
cat?
that's actually a little more I guess that would be east of my research area.
Yeah.
And I've not seen anything like that or heard of anybody seeing that in my research area. But
Okay.
I actually know somebody that saw one of those Black Panther things in the gorge area. But that's a
Really?
few hours east of my research area. But
Oh, are you able to share that story?
well, yeah, there's not much to it. It was a friend of mine. Late at night years ago, he saw a big black cougar, and he was telling me about it, and I was, saying, there's no black cougars, and I had heard rumors of this weird cat thing that people see in the gorge, and he wasn't aware that, how rare or basically impossible it is to find a solid black cougar in this area. And so I just informed him of that story of the legend of this cat, and then he looked into it, and he's convinced that's what he saw, because he said it was a solid black cougar and it was way bigger than what a cougar should be, and he didn't get any footage of it or anything. This happened before I was even involved with Sasquatch.
Wow. What do you think those are?
I don't know. And I'm trying to develop a second research area up by Mount Adams, because I went up there recently with my wife and kids, and we were going to this ice cave, and I found really good sign. I found an arch that had all the characteristics of what I would consider to be a Sasquatch arch. And then I found an upside down log stabbed in the ground. And that's a short actually on my channel. And then I found two more logs mysteriously impaled into the ground. And so I want to get up into that area and spend a lot of time. And that is right in the heart of where that cat and those other creatures are at. And there's just so many accounts of people seeing it. And the Native Americans have crazy, crazy legends all around Mount Adams and all over that area. So I'm a believer in that cat. I don't have an opinion on what it is or anything more than that, but I think it's out there. And those two Bigfoot researchers that died over a year ago now, it was right around Christmas of 24, I believe it was. They died in some really mysterious way, and they were right in the heart of that area where those creatures are at. And so it's just an area I'm very interested in, and I definitely want to develop a secondary research site and get in there and get familiarized with it. But
Do you think that they were like not prepared, or do you think they're not telling us everything about that one?
I know they're not telling us everything, because I've talked to people that are in with the search and rescue people up there, and the media left out some very important stuff. The media left out the fact that these guys ran away from their truck and ran across a river during flood mill of the winter. Who's going to go away from their truck through a river deep into the woods, opposite direction of their vehicle? They weren't lost because their truck was parked on a gravel road, so they didn't get lost. They ran into the trees, and then they decided to separate. One went one way, one went the other way, and then they both just sat down and froze to death and died in the trees. So the media story, that's how their bodies were found. So the media didn't talk about any of that they seem to have been chased, or why would they have separated? And who's just going to sit down and freeze to death? I mean, you're going to keep moving. You're not just going to huddle down in the woods and shiver to death. I don't care who you are. You're going to keep moving. And why did they separate? Why did they go the opposite direction of their truck? There's a lot surrounding that. And I want to make a video about all that. I want to do a lot of things, but I hope to make a video and kind of showcase that a little bit and try to get more information on it, because that story
Yeah.
just kind of disappeared and died. And then a lot of people that are involved with Sasquatch, they get mad when people want to even speculate that Sasquatch could potentially be violent. And now I'm not saying Sasquatch killed these guys at all. I'm just saying they died under some very strange circumstance, and we never got the full story. And they were up there researching Bigfoot when they died, but who knows what they bumped into, but something caused them to flee away from their truck and then separate, which you don't ever separate from your partner unless you're, trying to get away from him, hoping whatever's chasing you is going to eat him instead of me. And that's the only reason I can see them separating. And then they both just went off in the bushes to die and shiver to death. It doesn't make any sense. The story's crazy.
Yeah, and
the
what part
media-
of Washington was that again?
That's in the gorge. The Columbia River Gorge area, basically kind of up near the Bonneville Dam. Do you know where that's at?
Yeah, I'm aware of that area. There's been a lot of reports up in that area too. I
Yeah.
wonder if
Oh,
they had
yeah.
any leads.
That's
or
why they
anything.
were there doing
Yeah.
their own little research. Yeah. And they froze to death because they were soaking wet. It wasn't that they were so ill prepared. I mean, they were soaking wet. I don't care how prepared you are. Once you're soaking wet, you're going to get cold. But what doesn't make any sense is the way that they sat and froze to death. Why didn't they go back to their truck? Their truck was only like a mile and a half away from where they were at, and they chose to just hunker down and die. It's very weird. Oh, and also, for some reason, Astoria Search and Rescue was involved with that, which didn't make any sense because Astoria is way on the other side of the state. And when their bodies were pulled out of the woods, there's multiple morgues all over that area. They could have went right to Hood River. They could have went right to Bingen. They could have went to all these other places. Their bodies were flown all the way to Astoria, which makes no sense either. And those are all questions that I would love to have answered. And I'd love to make a video about all that and try to explain it all. And
you're talking about the two that that died, that froze to death. They took them to Astoria, their bodies.
That's what I was told. Yeah. By a friend of mine who's friends with the search and rescue.
Yeah, because I know someone that worked with them, and it was in Clackamas County, Oregon. So I heard they were actually locals over to this area. And
they are, yeah.
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 And that's just someone told. And so I was asking questions too to find out more. Like, did you hear anything? And this guy didn't have any information. He was just told they were wearing basketball shorts and were ill prepared. But I'm like, that doesn't really that nothing about it was like adding up to me. And Astoria is like 2 hours away from where we're at. That's crazy that they would fly all the way over there.
Well, and you know what else is really, really weird is you can pull up 20 articles about dead people being found in the woods, and you're going to get their names. Almost always the name of the deceased person is almost always in none of these guys' names were ever listed in any article, in any news brief, in anything. So I've always found that odd that their names were always shielded. And I don't believe that they were that ill prepared. I mean, these guys went out there to research Bigfoot. They didn't go out there in basketball shorts. Somehow they knew a good place to go, because I know people that do research right where they were found. So they had a pretty good bead on where to go. I don't think they'd be that stupid to go out there in swim trunks in December, but somehow they got soaking wet and got separated, and it's like they chose to sit down and die. It's really weird.
Yeah, something about that whole thing, and it got a lot of media attention too. So that was really what caught everyone's attention. And of course, we're gonna ask questions and go, "What happened?" So
it was a lot of media attention, but then it was short lived too, because it was just sort of like all over the place. Oh yeah, these guys died. Bigfoot researchers, ill prepared, blah blah blah, and that was that. But the media never told any of the story that the search and rescue people were sharing. Nothing about them fleeing away from their truck, and nothing about them separating from one another, because their bodies were found totally far apart from one another. So it's, yeah. And I don't know anything for sure on that. I just know what I was told. So
And
I could be. Wait, go ahead.
Do you feel like going forward for yourself that you want to start like being part of a team, or are you wanting to still go solo, like knowing that these are some of the risks going out there?
Yeah, it's I like being kind of my own person and not having the problems with the team. I do. I'm kind of independent like that. But I do have some concerns about being out there by myself. I mean, anything can happen. You can get hurt. You can get, and so it's kind of a mixed bag to answer that. I would work with other people, if they were the right fit. But whenever I'm up there with a group of people, you got all these different personalities. Somebody wants to go this way, somebody wants to go that way, and somebody wants to do this. And when you just go up there by yourself, you just alleviate all that and you just do what you want to do. So
I get that.
I would work with people and I would do teamwork stuff, but I will always stay somewhat independent and just keep it my own at the same time.
I get that. I'm kind of like that when I go to the mall. I'm like, I just want to go by myself and just have some quiet time and relax and look around. And it kind of drives me crazy when people want to drag you this way or that way. And I don't know. I feel like you just have your energy out there in the forest and can do your own thing. And you go out there with good intentions and you'll probably be all right.
Yeah. I mean, so far I have been. Well, I mean, I've gotten injured and things have happened, but I try to be prepared for that.
Have you considered doing like a satellite phone or something in case anything like you need to get a hold of out?
I've been meaning to get one, and I've been looking into them and seeing how much they cost, and it is something that I will have. I just currently don't have one.
Okay. Yeah, I would put that on the number one priority. You should get
I know. I will.
Amazon wish list.
Yeah.
That would be cool. Yeah, like an Amazon wish list, and we could always share that link too.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Well, yeah, it was really nice having you on today. It was like so much great stuff that you have going.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, we were supposed to wrap it up in an hour. We went over a little bit. That's why.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. Well, thanks again for being on my show. And if there's anything else I can do in the future to help you, I'm definitely here for you. I like doing all the tech side of stuff and supporting channels. So
yeah, I'll definitely take you up on that for sure. And I appreciate that offer.
Yeah, and I'll work on the red hair one next and see what I can get going with that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being on the show. And thank you everyone for watching too. Make sure to subscribe to Hugh Knight over at NW Yeti Quest and follow his adventures. He's got lots of great content and it's very relaxing too. You can just sit there and kind of relax and watch his show.
Yeah, check it out, please.
All right. Well, thank you everyone. I got to find the end the stream button here. All right. Well, have a good evening.
Searching for prints and a mystical spark. Climbing the ridgeline where the air gets thin. The hunt for the legend is about to begin. Chasing the legend through a neon haze. Lost in the woods for nights and days. The signal is peaking, the truth won't fade. Hunting the wild with Bigfoot face. Thank you for watching the Bigfoot Fates show, where untold stories are heard. Northwest stories. The secrets we keep.